foundation. I have had the foundation actually for quite some time. I purchased it not long after it actually came out, and I do have some opinions on it. I've played with it here and there just to kind of see how it works and all that stuff. So while it's not a new product, I think since I've used it for a little while, I can kind of give you a good idea on, you know, if you're gonna go make a purchase for the other items, whether or not this is something you should pick up. This behaves quite differently than other foundations that I've used or that I prefer to use. So Lisa describes this kind of as a foundation that will mimic whatever you've got going on underneath it. So essentially, if you are trying to go for a more dewy effect, you put on a dewy base or your skincare underneath, it'll work fine with that. Or if you're looking for something more mattified, put it over a mattifying primer and it works with that. What I have found, this formula actually tends to be almost like a film forming sort of formula. You need to shake it before you put it on. But it's like that kind of formula, and so it doesn't work with beauty blenders very well because the water in the beauty blender just kind of keeps picking it up off your face, and it doesn't work with blending brushes or like a buffing brush very well for the same reason, because it starts to actually like set in quite quickly. And so if you're buffing that around, you're going to get streaks, and like as you buff that outer perimeter, you're going to like kind of push all of the foundation to that area. So like the best way to apply it is either with fingers or with a brush like this. This is a Marc Jacobs. Sometimes if I'm looking for something more detailed, I go in with this Laura Mercier. The shades, so I'm still a little bit tan for me from summer, but the shade range, last year when I bought this shade, it was still a little bit deep for me. This is an olive tone. It's like a light olive. I believe is it shade number 9, so it's 9 up, and which I think is pretty good, but it's not as desaturated as of an olive as I would like. To me, it still does kind of lean a little bit yellow. For me, I like it when olives kind of lean a little bit gray, if that makes sense. So I think it still does look good. I would say though that this does tend to oxidize on my skin. At least I'll put it on and it starts to deepen up while I'm wearing it. So I did kind of want to point that out, to where if you notice that you get it and you put it on and it seems light at first, wait a little bit, because it does tend to deepen. And I think it's because the sort of film forming formula is kind of like paint. Once paint dries, it's a little bit darker. And even on my hand, you can kind of notice it's a little bit darker where it's starting to dry there. So I did this side, and you can build it up, what she says you can. But again, I notice if it's already started to dry and then I try to go over it, it's a little bit harder to build up without causing like streaks or picking up what's underneath it. I mean, you definitely can, you just have to be really careful. Or maybe I just need to wait a little bit longer for it to like fully set. Or I don't know, maybe I'm not working fast enough and I need to try to build it up before it's fully set. Either way, it's a little bit tricky to work with. I'm guessing I need to let it maybe sit longer if I want to build it up. I normally don't go for a full coverage foundation, so I don't really have the need to try to build it up. I had just tried for the purpose of like the review video. I also noticed that it doesn't set as well if you put on more moisturizing products underneath. So she says that it does start to behave like the products you have underneath, whereas then it doesn't set as well, if that makes sense. So like it might continue to like move on the face, and maybe that's why I have a difficult time building it up. It's just because I have put such a moisturized base on. Let me zoom you in so you can see my skin. And you can kind of see in these sorts of areas. I'm gonna kind of pat it out here. So the finish is beautiful, but I just find that I have to put in quite a bit of work to make sure it doesn't bunch up in one area when applying it. So I am going to try to build it up over these more red areas that I have here and see how that goes. All right, so that's as much as I'm going to try to build it up. I don't have a Lisa Eldridge concealer, and I'm not even sure if she makes one. I mean, she probably does, but I'm actually going to go in with my concealer and sort of take care of my eyes and my blemishes, and I'll be right back. I'll also throw some brows. Okay, so I am back. I want to point out that I think that the foundation is behaving so much better on my skin because of what I used to prep my skin today. And I used the Merit Great Skin. I did a whole video on Merit if you guys are interested in it, and I will have that linked up here for you. And then also I do have an affiliate link with Merit where I do get a percentage back, just kind of like FYI. But I didn't have as many of the issues as I had when just either using like a sunscreen or a moisturizer underneath. I feel like my skin behaves so much better with that, and the foundation itself just behaved so much better when I did that. So I just wanted to point that out. And I did use a little bit of concealer, and the concealer I used is the Beauty Pie Everyday Great Skin Concealer. And I used this because the Beauty Pie foundation, which is their Great Skin Foundation, I've done reviews on it before and the coloring was never right for me. But I find that that foundation actually behaves very similarly to the Lisa Eldridge. So it reminded me, I'm like, hey, maybe this concealer will work well with the foundation since they behave like very close in the same way. Like, I'm not going to say that the finishes on the skin are the same or anything like that, but that one also, you can't really use a buffing brush and you have to either use your fingers or this kind of brush, or it kind of does the same thing. So anyway, so let's get into the good stuff. So the first thing that I just purchased is this Elevated Glow, and I got the shade Crystal Nebula, and I haven't even swatched this, so I'm hoping it's a good shade for me. But you can use this again as like a highlight, or you can put it under your foundation. And this is kind of Lisa Eldridge's version of the Charlotte Tilbury. I forget the name of the Charlotte Tilbury one, but it's like a glow. It's got like this big doe foot wand. And like, so on the back of my hand here, let's put some. Okay, so I don't know. This might be good for this foundation, but I don't know. I'll put some there and then go in with this. Actually, that's very, very nice. I was afraid that it was gonna like pull up the foundation, but obviously like she made it to go with her foundation, so it didn't. Put some on the nose here. And I've really been wanting to try the Charlotte Tilbury one, but it's always sold out in the lighter shades. And then I saw this and I'm like, okay, well, I obviously don't need the Charlotte Tilbury one now. And this is it peeling up a little bit? I don't think so. I think it's in my mind. So I'm just gonna pat that in. So she doesn't have a blush, but I have seen in many of her videos where she uses her lipsticks as blush. So we're gonna circle back and kind of do blush when we do lipstick. So I purchased enough to get this pouch, and this pouch is actually in the shade of one of her lipsticks. I forget the name of it. I'll have it here on the screen. And that would be a very fun shade of lipstick. But let's go ahead and hop into the goodies. I purchased 2 of the eyeshadow palettes, and then I got a lipstick, and then I got one of these Liquid Lurix liquid eyeshadows. And there were 2 shades that I really liked, but I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna start off with one shade, and then if I just love the product, I'll go back and get the other one. But it was this shade, and then a shade that like kind of had a strange name, but it was kind of like a greeny kind of gold, like aged gold shade. But this one is in the shade Emily, and it's like a beautiful sort of like taupey rose gold shade. So I'm gonna start off by just dipping into these two palettes. I recently did a video where I looked at Lisa Eldridge's swatches of her palettes and I recreated those palettes with my Natasha Denona shades and also some Viseart and some other shades as well. And I saved the two to the palettes that I made so I could kind of see how close I got to the actual palettes when I got them. There's a shade missing here because it was actually a single shadow from Burberry that I had. So I think actually what I want to do first is actually just go in and I'm going to swatch a palette on each hand. I need to clean this one off and we're going to compare. So I'm just going to remember Lisa on the left and then like the other one on the right. So let me clean off my hand. Okay, so I'm so excited. The first one I'm going to open up is the Cinnabar palette here. And I literally haven't even opened these. I'm so excited. We're going to open and here we are. So her shades in the pan look quite a bit. Actually, I think I have them. This is how I had them matched up kind of. There we go. So they look quite a bit different in the pan than mine, especially that deep dark brown. So I'm excited to see. So I am going to first swatch Lisa's on my fingers. Right away, I'm going to tell you this formula feels beautiful. It reminds me very much of the Tom Ford. Very pretty. I need to wipe off my fingers. Okay, and let's do the bottom three now. Okay. There they are. And then okay. So these are Lisa's on my left hand. I guess it would be on your right. And I am now going to jump in and do the other palette, which are mostly Natasha Denona. I will have here on the screen like a still shot from my swatch video that I did, and it'll have everything listed as to what they are. Okay, actually I am surprised at how close I got just from pictures of swatches. So again, this one is Lisa and this is the palette I made. Very close. I will say that the Lisa palette, the brown is a little bit sort of richer. This one leans a little bit lighter, more orange. And then also the Natasha Denona, like the sparkle shade, is more sparkly than Lisa's sparkle shade. Hers is more refined and this one is just like more, like has more oomph. The top shades, I will say the Natasha Denona one, this one is a little bit deeper and this one's a little bit lighter and more yellow. But I mean, I got really close with these. The formula though on Lisa's shadows, I haven't used them on my eyes, but they feel beautiful. Which obviously Natasha Denona's formula is also beautiful. I do find a lot of similarities in the formulas, but then also in particular, because I don't have those types of shades in, while Natasha Denona does kind of have like those sort of like creamy to matte kind of shades, the shades that I used to make the palette aren't that same texture, if that makes sense. So they may behave differently on the eyes. To kind of compare though, the formula, so I have this palette right here in Tiger Eye, and you can see how those shades are kind of almost like a sort of like creamy matte texture. And what's the other one? It's like that Smoky Quartz. Again, the same thing. So kind of that same kind of texture. So a beautiful, beautiful texture. And then if you were kind of wanting to compare them to Tom Ford, which I just did, the Tom Ford palettes are like $89 and Lisa Eldridge's was $68. So beautiful formulas in these. So I'm going to wash off my hands And we're then going to jump into the Vega palette. This one I'm actually not as confident in the shades that I duped just based off of her shades online. They were beautiful. And the kind of special like shiny shade in it, I don't think I 100% duped. And then also the gray, I felt like her gray was a little bit more of like a smoky blue kind of gray. So let's go ahead and open this up. And here it is. And then kind of comparing it to my little palette that I created, I had this is like the shiny shade, and then these were the rest of my shades. So you can kind of see there are some differences there, but I'm gonna go ahead and start by swatching out the Lisa, doing the top shades here. I mean, these textures are so buttery and so pretty. Starting up here. And maybe get more of that first one. It's very light. It's a very pale gray. Yes. So that is the first row of the Lisa. All right, and then the second row, starting here. There we are. Okay, so these are Lisa's shades. And right off the bat, I know that this shade that I duped, this has more brown in it. This to me almost seems like it's got a brown base with a silver reflect. And mine just seemed 100% silver. I think this is a little bit lighter, that's a little bit more blue, but we're gonna see. All right, so let's go ahead and go into this, starting here. And I think that the Natasha Denona one has more pigment. So there it is. I mean, they're still pretty close. And then let's do the bottom shades. So then I have this one, and then on this finger, I'll do the black. And then on my middle finger, I had this shade from Burberry called Shell. So this is the palette I made, and then this is hers. So you can kind of see this is a little less blue. The silver shade is a little bit more silver, but it still has kind of like the brown in it. But this one just seems a little bit more neutral, while this is a cooler kind of brown under the silver, if that makes sense. The special shade's really close, although Lisa's is a little bit shinier. I'm wondering though, then this is a little bit cooler of a gray at the top. So very similar, but there are quite a few differences between the two. I do wonder, I have a shade, because there's like more sparkle in Lisa's than I had initially thought, and I do have a shade from Victoria Beckham that might be closer, so hold a second. So this shade from Victoria Beckham, I think might be closer to the sparkly shade in the Lisa Eldridge. So I am gonna swatch it and then put it next to the Lisa Eldridge right there. So here it is, and then very close. I think Lisa's though is still a little bit more bright, and then that one, yeah, has a little bit more depth in the underside of the shade. But I mean, very, very close in color. So I think that actually is a closer shade than this one, because this one is like a smooth sort of metallic wet look, and it's not a sparkle, whereas you can kind of see sparkle in this one. Those grays are closer than I thought they would be. That's the Lisa Eldridge and that's the other one. They are so close though, like very close. And then the Minky shade, I did recently get these Natasha Denona shadows from the Black Friday sale, and I think that there may be a better match to that sort of like minky sort of silver shade. Is this it? Let's see, I'm gonna put it next to it. So there. Maybe that's closer than what I had chosen. And that is a different Natasha Denona shade. It's the shade Glaze. And I don't know, whatever this palette is, the shade Glaze. What is this palette? I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know that I necessarily needed these palettes, but I will say I'm excited to play with the textures because they feel beautiful. As far as the colors though, is I already had stuff like close enough, and I'm actually quite surprised at how close I was able to come to the shades of her palettes just based off of the swatches. So I think I was feeling a little bit insecure while swatching and doing things online because the swatches seemed a little bit different in different lighting, but I was still able to tell close enough to get in the wheelhouse, I guess, in the wheelhouse, in the ballpark. I already did the looks that Lisa did from her palettes using the ones I created. So I think I'm gonna play around and mix in both of these today to kind of create my eye look. I think I first wanna go into this shade right here and sweep it all over the lid just to get some evenness. So I'm gonna go ahead and get in there. And actually get the concealer out of my eye crease. You know what, I'm gonna zoom you in. We'll experience these textures together. And I believe she used her finger in her video when putting these down, but I mean, it's fine. So I really like this shade. Which if you were to buy it individually from her, which you can, it is the shade Raw Sienna. It actually matches my shirt. So I really like that. All right, so now I want to jump in to this shade, which was her kind of minkier kind of shade. And then just kind of put that a little bit over the lid. So I got her coolest palette and essentially her warmest palette. And I'm putting them together. Was I hiding behind this the whole time? I'm pretty sure I just was. Okay, and then I want to go in with this sort of blued kind of shade and work it into my crease. So I typically don't do a ton of crease work because I keep mentioning this. Now that I'm doing more videos with eyeshadow, I feel like I have to mention it. My eyes are uneven. So as you can see, my eyelids are uneven, my eyes themselves are uneven. One eye opens more than the other, and I feel like when you use a lot of liner or you're working into the crease and doing more graphic looks, you make it way more noticeable. But I can kind of cheat and create a higher crease on one side if I really want to go into the crease. And then I'm going to go into this brown down there. And I don't know if yeah, there we go. Have to get it into the brush. With the sort of more seamless matte shades, you kind of have to work your brush into them a little bit more because it is almost like a cream. Then I'm going to kind of like try to flick this up a little bit just to pull the eye up. I'm going to go over that a little bit. Here we go. I'm like really mixing the cool and the warm. I don't know that I would do this on a daily basis, but it is fun to see how the shadows work together. I need to just get a clean brush and kind of clean this up a little bit. Also, when they're kind of like that sort of creamy texture, I just like to use my finger also to kind of blend it a little bit better. I'm gonna get this little brush here and go back into that first shade in the warmer palette, and I'm gonna run that along my lower lash line. All right, and then I wanna go into her shiny shade here, and I'm gonna put that over the center of my lid. Okay, and then I think I want a little bit of it, I'm gonna put it on my pinky here and stamp it right there. You can definitely tell I used more of the cool shades. Like I need to go in, I am gonna go in with a warmer shade and put it on the outside to warm up the look a little bit. So let's go into this. Yeah, I'm gonna go into that shade right there. What is it called? Deep Ochre. All right, so I'm gonna pop in with this little angled liner brush that I have here, and I'm gonna go into this shade, which is Fired Earth. And I'm going to use that as my eyeliner. I am getting some fallout there, which I tend to get anytime I try to use shades as liner, unless I wet the shade first. But this Seamless Matte is like a cream type formula, so I don't even know that it would behave well if I wet it first. I'm just gonna use my finger and kind of blur that out a little bit. And I think that's it for the eyes. I am gonna try to dust away. Oops. So I might have to go back. Yeah, the shades are so pigmented that you can't really dust away that way, and that's my fault. All right, we're gonna maybe try to patch the foundation a little bit. So I'm gonna actually go in with that foundation brush, and I'm wondering if I can just kind of do this. Let's get a little foundation on it maybe still. Yeah. That seemed to work the best. I might need to take a little bit of foundation though, and then just kind of patch my makeup there. And that'll also tell me about this building, because I've had this foundation on for like an hour now, and let's see how it builds up. So I'm gonna really work it into this brush, and then just kind of patch over those areas. And actually I think it's working fine. Again, patting it in I think is the best course of action. All right, I am gonna jump back in with some of this and put over that, to kind of just add a little bit of shine there. Yeah, that's nice. I might have just put a little bit too much there, but that's okay. And I do think I want to use my fingers and kind of blend through here a little bit to make my eyes look more even. All right, so typically I would not put more eyeshadow on this look, but I do want to try this out. So let's swatch it. I just took a minute to swatch the two gray side by side for my friend Amy. But here's this. And let's put some on. I don't even know that you're going to be able to tell much of a difference in the look, since I did already use like a shiny shade from the palette, but I did want to try out the formula at least. These feel super nice, and I think that this might be something that if I just want like a quick shiny look on the lid, that I would go for, because let me rub it out a little bit more. Look how pretty that is. So I think that's probably gonna be something I typically would wear alone. I think I put way more over on this side. So now I feel like I gotta go in and even them out. So I picked up the shade Velvet Fawn. The Velvet lipstick, those kind of look more up my alley because I like kind of blotting those out. And then this is the shade. And then she wanted to make the lipsticks themselves look more like velvet. So it's textured, and it actually reminds me a lot of the Dior lipsticks because they have the same texture on them. And I don't even know, yeah, I don't know it's gonna get close enough to show you the texture, but it's just like a little etching, and it's the same thing in the Dior in that one. Now Lisa Eldridge's lipstick packaging, so it's not reusable, but it reminds me so much of the Beauty Pie lipstick packaging, which they just came out with this. And the Beauty Pie is refillable, where that comes out. Lisa's is too though, right? I wonder if these are made in the same place. Hers has gotta be, no, I'm gonna break it. It's not refillable. But they are so similar. They're both magnetic. And they're both companies based in the UK. I mean, that doesn't mean that these are made in the UK. Made in Italy. Where was this one made? Because a lot of them go to the Italian labs. Where were you made? Made in Italy. Interesting. Now, it could at least be just packaged in Italy and not be the same thing, because I am not a fan of these lipsticks from Beauty Pie, which again kind of have that texture. It's not as textured, but the back side definitely kind of has like that matte texture on them. So I'm hoping that this is a better formula, or this is a better formula than this. So let's just get into it. I'm gonna swatch it on my hand first. Here we go. Very pretty. It's like a nice, pretty warm shade, which is gonna look crazy with this cool eye. So actually, it's muted. I mean, the formula feels very similar to the Beauty Pie. I think her colors are better. I might need to, like, obviously moisturize my lips more. I was hoping this would be like one of those matte formulas that's kind of like also moisturizing yet matte at the same time. All right, so let's go in here and use it as blush. I might end up liking all of these better as a blush. So I'm gonna use this and kind of pat that out. Yeah, it looks beautiful as a blush. I'm gonna put a little bit more on straight from the bullet onto my finger and then dab it in. I'm gonna work it into each finger and kind of just dab it in. So I actually really like that shade. It's kind of like a muted shade. I think if I moisturize my lips and wear a lip liner, I'll like it more, but it's making me look pretty dry right now. I'm gonna apply some mascara and we'll be right. So I've got my mascara on. I'm all done with my makeup, and I wanna go over and talk about the products a little bit, about what I liked, what I didn't like. And then also I'm going to try to reapply the lipstick here in a second. After this lip balm sets in, so I can kind of see if it works a little bit better for me. So while I was sitting here on the break just to kind of like rehydrate my lips, I looked on Lisa Eldridge's websites at the ingredients, and then I went over to Beauty Pie because I kind of had some suspicions, and I looked at the ingredients, and I will have the ingredients for both here on the screen right now as I'm talking. and they are the same formula. I will say though that Lisa's has more pigment in it, and Beauty Pie's is a sheer lipstick, so it's that formula with less pigment. So the main differences you're going to see are going to be at the bottom. You're going to see, obviously depending on the shade, you're obviously going to see different colors like on the ingredients list for each one. So with that being said, I have 2 of the Beauty Pie lipsticks here. They're all magnetic, so they're stuck together. They're the same. And I'm going to swatch them for you. And I think when I did my haul and I talked about these lipsticks, I told you I didn't like the formula because I found it a little bit patchy, and I also found it drying. So here are the 2 Beauty Pie shades I have. I have the shade Nothing On, which is right there. It's a sort of pale, like sort of nude shade. And then I have the shade Sheer Mocha, which is right there. And it's kind of a sort of brownie berry tone. So those are the 2 of those that I chose. And then I have Velvet Fawn from Lisa Eldridge. And you can see a lot more pigment. But on my lips, same thing. So I'm going to just put it on over this. And I also think it's because dimethicone, I noticed that when I put it on my skin, I find it drying on my skin as well. I don't know that it's particularly a drying ingredient, but on my dry skin, I do find it to be a little bit drying. And so I typically don't even put it on my face as well. I mean, but using it as a blush though, it looks really nice. So there we have it. Not going full on with it, but I think that I'm going to try some of her other formulas. I don't think that this formula is for me, but I will say the shade that she created is a beautiful shade. I just don't like, I am going to use it as a blush. It's because it's kind of like a little bit pinky, not too pinky, but it runs a little bit warm. That's actually like the perfect blush shade for me. So, so the product won't go to waste in that way. But I do want to talk about some of the other things that I got and just kind of do a quick rundown and tell you what I like and what I don't like. So you already know I do not like the lipstick, which is very sad to me because I feel like she started the brand off of lipsticks and she's known for her lipsticks. It could be the shade because the shade is a lighter shade. And so maybe if I went with like did a lip line and then went with like one of her more like deeper vintage shades, I might enjoy that more. But this sort of pale shade on my pigmented lips, it just makes me look old. So there's that. But the foundation, after getting to know it and using it for a while, at first I didn't like it, but now I do like it. I think especially after using it over the primer I used it on, I think my skin looks beautiful. So I will be kind of keeping this out to the side to use because it actually does match me pretty well right now. And then also I really like the elevated glow. I'm sure it's similar to the Charlotte Tilbury. The packaging, by the way, is beautiful. But she had it in my shade and it was available and I could buy it. So that's why I ended up getting it. But I mean, let me just go ahead and show you. It's like a sort of pale antiqued gold, but then rubbed in, it literally just looks like beautiful, healthy skin. So I'm a big fan of this. Did I tell you the shade I got? I got Crystal Nebula. She does have other shades. So as far as the eyeshadow palettes are concerned, I showed you the swatches. I don't necessarily think that I needed either one, which you never, I guess, need anything. But I'm definitely going to use them. The textures are beautiful. I think that's what makes it. The shades, I wouldn't say there's anything special about these shades that I cannot find elsewhere, but the different textures in here I think are great. And also the seamless mattes are very close to the Tom Ford shades, which Tom Ford quads are like $89. So I think this is a pretty good deal as far as that is concerned. So I do like those. I actually think that the Liquid Lyrics, I think this is kind of something special. I'll swatch it again. I think this would be like a beautiful one and done eye, or maybe add something in to kind of deepen up your crease. But I think once it's like rubbed in, that is special. That's like a special event eye. That is so pretty. So I definitely, like, look up close. Just look at it. Is it, don't focus on my face. Look. Very pretty. By the way, again, this is the shade Emily. So I am kind of interested in some other shades, but again, I'm getting ready to go on a low buy, so it might be a while before I get another one. And then what else did I have? I think that's everything that I got. So yeah, I love the look. I think the look is well put together and curated and beautiful. I expect nothing less from Lisa. She just probably drinks more water than I do, and it probably has more moisturized skin. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
I know what you need, I would bleed for you, but you're taking